Your kid points at a faded Polaroid and whispers, "That's me." You laugh until you read the label, October 31st, 2010, the year someone vanished. The house on Maple Drive keeps prizes on shelves, sealed costumes, perfect little smiles behind glass. Voice like varnish promises to preserve every laugh. You feel the walls breathing, the photos developing your face. Something in the house wants to be remembered, and it has a way of keeping what it remembers. What will they put in the frame with your name?
The wrong house on Maple Drive. It was one of those October evenings that looked stolen from a painting, cool, copper light, dry leaves skipping across the pavement, and air that smelled faintly of smoke and caramel. Westlake, Ohio, lived for Halloween. Every porch glowed orange, every lawn had skeletons half buried in the grass, and somewhere a speaker played the old monster mash like it was a hymn. Ryan Cole, 20 years old and reluctantly responsible, walked ahead of 3 kids who were buzzing with sugar and adrenaline. His little brother Mason, 9, and Mason's friends Drew and Tyler. Their costumes hung crook. Their sneakers glowed in the dark. Ryan carried a flashlight, pretending not to feel the old, childlike thrill creeping up the back of his neck. Halloween had always meant safety here. Parents waved from porches. Neighbors handed out cider. Nothing bad ever happened on Maple Drive until that night. They'd hit most of their planned stops. The house that gave full-size Snickers, the one with the bucket toss game, the lady who always dressed as a witch and took Polaroids of every kid she saw. Then Mason pointed up the hill. "Let's go there." At the top of Maple Drive stood the Whitcomb Mansion, a sprawling, white-columned house half hidden behind wrought iron gates. It had always been a local legend, a Halloween display so elaborate that people lined up for selfies with the decorations. Rumors said the owner, Arthur Whitcomb, was an ex-Hollywood set designer who turned his home into an annual haunted tour. Ryan hesitated. The place looked too perfect, like a movie scene frozen mid-frame. The windows glowed with a deep amber light, and shapes moved inside like shadows rehearsing. Outside the gate stood a man in a dark coat holding a clipboard. "Private tour tonight," the man said when they approached. "Families only. Small groups." He smiled, revealing teeth, so even they looked artificial. "You're in luck. Last tour of the night." Mason's friends cheered. Ryan sighed and took the tickets. The man handed him heavy cardstock with red ink that read, "A special Halloween experience by invitation." The gate clicked open behind them like a throat swallowing. Inside, the mansion was quiet in a way that made noise feel forbidden. The air smelled of lemon polish and something faintly sweet like Play-Doh left in the sun. A tall man appeared at the end of the corridor, dressed in a black suit, hair silver, and perfectly parted. "Welcome, guests," he said with a voice as smooth as theater curtains. "I'm Arthur Whitcomb. Tonight you'll walk through memories, our attempt to preserve the innocence of Halloween past." The foyer glowed with hundreds of candles inside glass jars. Along the walls hung framed photos of children in costumes, vampires, ghosts, princesses, each labeled with a year. Mason stopped dead. "Ryan, that one looks like me." Ryan turned. The photo showed a boy in a white bedsheet ghost costume. Same freckles, same cowlick. The label read, "Tommy L. -2011. "That's not you," Ryan said, forcing a laugh. "Just a coincidence." But his gut turned to ice. They moved through rooms staged like a nostalgic museum, antique toys, candy jars, and racks of vintage costumes labeled by size and year. Every display looked too new, too cared for. The air had a thickness that clung to the back of the throat, and somewhere in the walls a low hum pulsed like breathing. Whitcomb's voice floated from room to room. "Each child's smile," he said softly, "is a moment worth keeping. The world forgets so easily." Ryan tried to smile back, but something about the man's eyes, wide, patient, wet with sincerity, made his stomach twist. When they entered a narrow hallway lined with glass cabinets, Drew pointed. Inside one cabinet was a tiny red cape. The label read, "Jamie to 2010, Ryan froze." Jamie had been the name on a missing child poster he'd seen as a kid. The same October, the same town. He leaned closer, and his reflection warped on the glass. Behind his reflection, for a second, he swore he saw movement, a pale hand, small as a child's, brushing the inside of the case. He blinked. It was gone. Whitcomb's voice came from directly behind him. "Children's memories can linger," he said softly. "If you listen closely, you might even hear them." Then, faintly, Ryan did hear something like a giggle muffled underwater. He spun around. Nothing. They were led downstairs to what Whitcomb called the Hall of Halloween Past. Amber bulbs buzzed like insects. Along the walls, hundreds of Polaroids formed an impossible collage, smiling kids, all dressed for Halloween, some photos yellowed with age. The labels in the corner were all the same pattern, WH 1031st's year. The same initials, the same night, every year. Then Whitcomb clapped his hands once. The sound echoed sharp, final. "That concludes the tour. Now," he said with a thin smile, "for the immersive part." The front door slammed shut. The click of the lock sounded like a gun cocking. Ryan's flashlight flickered. The guards outside the gate were gone. Every window was barred. The air shifted from warm to heavy, like someone had sealed the house from the world. "Just part of the experience," Whitcomb said, his voice suddenly amplified through hidden speakers. "Stay calm. You'll be safe here. We preserve what others waste." A woman laughed nervously. "Is this a prank?" No one answered. The kids began to cry. Mason clutched Ryan's sleeve. "I want to go home." Ryan tried the front door. It didn't budge. He slammed his shoulder into it, again and again, until his arm throbbed. Nothing. Then a sound filled the house like dozens of whispers overlapping, voices so faint they barely formed words. Ryan strained to listen. "Don't forget me," one of them said. They scattered, looking for a way out. The kitchen had no windows. The basement door was padlocked from their side, welded shut. In the study, Ryan found a ledger rows of names, all with dates beside them. Some had notes. Returned, resettled, preserved. Others were blank. One name stood out, Jamie, 2010, preserved. His breath hitched. Then the house spoke. Not Whitcomb, the house itself. The walls creaked in unison. The lights dimmed to a bruised red, and a child's lullaby began to play through hidden speakers. It wasn't a recording. It wavered off-key, like someone was singing from inside the walls. The lyrics were wrong. Trick or treat, stay inside. Mama says the ghosts don't hide. Ryan backed away. The photos on the wall were changing slowly, impossibly. Faces he didn't recognize faded, and their own reflections began to appear in the glass. Mason, Drew, Tyler, Ryan himself, faint outlines forming like wet film developing. Whitcomb's voice returned, calm as before. Every year we add to the collection. Every smile saved from decay. A crash upstairs made everyone flinch. Someone screamed. Ryan grabbed Mason's hand and ran for the back hall. They found a maintenance door slightly ajar and shoved through it. Beyond was a narrow passage filled with old boxes. One fell open inside were children's costumes neatly folded, each sealed in plastic bags. A Polaroid was tucked inside each one. He flipped through them, dozens, hundreds. Same date, October 31st, different years. He felt bile rise. Then, from the far end of the hall, came a metallic scrape. Footsteps slow, measured, heavy. Arthur. A woman's voice hissed through the speaker system. The new ones are straying. Ryan grabbed the nearest metal pole and motioned for the kids to stay behind him. The footsteps stopped. Then, without warning, a door at the far end burst open. One of the attendants stepped in, eyes blank, smile sewn on. Ryan swung. The metal hit bone. The man fell but didn't cry out. He just grinned wider, blood bubbling between his teeth. The lights flickered. From the walls came a chorus of faint, childlike laughter. They bolted through the next door and stumbled into a garage. Under a tarp sat a rusted van with a logo. Whitcomb Family Fun Tours. Ryan yanked the tarp away and froze. Inside the van were boxes each labeled with a name. Tommy, Jamie, Sarah, Eli. Inside one open box was a Halloween bucket, still half filled with candy. The wrappers had fused into the plastic with age. Then, through a cracked side window, he saw movement in the yard shadows, standing still, small and hunched. Children. No, not children. Their faces were pale, waxy, featureless, where mouths should be. They watched silently, fog collecting at their feet. "Mason," Ryan whispered, "don't look." But Mason was already staring. His lips trembled. "They're calling me." "No, they're not." "Yes, they are. They know my name." Ryan grabbed him just as one of the shapes pressed its hand against the glass. The fingers left a print that smoked like acid. A siren wailed, suddenly shrill, piercing, mechanical. Ryan didn't know if it was an alarm or a trap. The house shifted. He could feel it, the floors subtly moving, doors realigning, walls breathing. "Run!" They sprinted through a service hall, following a draft of cold air. Ryan spotted a window partly open, just a crack, but enough. He broke the lock with a wrench, shoved the glass outward, and pushed Mason through. Drew followed, then Tyler. Behind them, Whitcomb's voice thundered, not calm, any more furious. "You can't take them. They belong to memory now." Ryan climbed through last. The second his feet hit the grass, the air outside felt electric, real, alive. They bolted through the hedges, tearing at branches until their arms bled, and stumbled into the streetlight's yellow pool. When Ryan turned back, the mansion looked still again, peaceful, picturesque, glowing like nothing had happened. But in the upper window, a figure stood, holding something up to the glass. It was a Polaroid of them. The police arrived minutes later, lights flashing red and blue across the maple leaves. The gate was welded shut. When they broke it open, the mansion was empty. No Whitcomb, no attendants, no photos on the walls. Just rows of glass cases, empty. Weeks passed. Investigators called it an elaborate hoax, but Ryan knew better. Every Halloween after that, he'd find something small on his porch, a toy ring, a child's mask, once even a Polaroid of Mason, asleep. The photo's handwriting said, you're still remembered. Now, years later, Ryan keeps that photo locked in a drawer. Mason won't go trick-or-treating anymore. And every October, Ryan drives past Maple Drive and sees it an empty lot where the mansion used to stand. Empty except for one porch light. Always on, always waiting. And sometimes, if you stop your car and listen, you'll hear faint laughter under the wind like children playing behind glass. They never forget. They never let go.